Test, test. Okay.
Test, test, test.
wonder. Thank you. If I could ask our candidates to come to the front. Do we have a internet password? I thought maybe I can see what's going on the website.
What was it?
If I'm looking at you. I bet if you stood up, I would say yes. Because where's the camera for the Zoom people? Yeah, yeah. That's good.
They're joining via Google Meet. Here. Could you get it for me while I'm doing it? Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you online people for coming and joining us today for the Georgetown Meet the Candidates Forum. We really appreciate you taking the time. We appreciate the candidates taking the time out to let's have a conversation. Let's talk. Let's try to determine, you know, what do we stand for? What do our candidates stand for? How will they represent us as citizens of Georgetown? So before we get started, I'd like for Dr. Swain, if he could come up and share a prayer with us.
Will you join me as we pray? Gracious God, we give you thanks for this time together, this fellowship, this opportunity to engage in conversation, dialogue, and for the food that we are consuming for the nourishment of our physical bodies. We ask that you would bless those who planned this event, the sponsors, as well as the candidates who have come to let us know why they want to represent us in the various roles in which they are pursuing. We ask all these blessings in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Dr. Swain. So we have the mayor's race. Thank you. The mayor's race. We have two unincumbents, our city council district 2, unopposed, our city council district 6, unopposed, and we have GISD place 4, Stephanie Blank and Marcos Gonzalez that are here. Thank you. We have Jonathan McDade that's here, that's running for mayor. and we thank you all for being here. Then we have with GISD Place 5 that's also unopposed. So what we wanted to do here today is, again, have a conversation. We have some questions that we would like to ask of the candidates, and we want to know if you have questions of the candidates, and if you do, we'll ask that you come to the mic and ask those questions. We have to take our civic responsibility seriously, and so many times our friends, our neighbors, even us says, why is that happening? Well, it's happening because we don't get involved. And so it's really time for us to share information, and so that we all get involved and we make responsible decisions as we make decisions for our electoral process. So I want to start with the thank yous, because I don't want to forget anybody. I want to thank Georgetown Citizens Memorial Association. I'm Regina, the president, and if our members, if you could raise your hands or stand. Okay, then we have GTX Connect. We have Chuck Collins is the executive director. Raise your hand. Any other GTX Connect? And then we have the Micah Workers for Racial Justice here, and Cindy Slater. And your group, could y'all stand up and raise your hand? Thank you. Thank y'all all for organizing this, even though I don't know, it may not be a huge number, it's a number that needs to hear the conversation so that we can share the word. Then we want to thank our online group for streaming in and watching right now. We wanted to give a special thanks to First United Methodist Church, for allowing us to use this facility. We want to thank, what did I do with the card? George Vega or Jimmy, I'm sorry. Jimmy Vega's Smokehouse. They're located at 408 West University. They provided the barbecue, which is delicious. So you have to stop by and see Jimmy Vega's Smokehouse. They were great. And thank you for providing and helping us with the food. And then we also want to thank the Georgetown Health Foundation, because they are such supporters of nonprofits across the city. So thank you guys for helping us. Again, as I mentioned, there's a mayoral race, and who we have here today as a representative of the mayoral race and a representative that are running for District 4, Place 4 of the Georgetown Independent School District, Stephanie Blank and Marcus Gonzalez. What I do want to mention that we did have one person that's not here today that reached out and said that he couldn't make it because of other commitments, Josh Schroeder, so he did respond. The incumbents or the unopposed didn't respond, but just the next time, we want you to come and have the conversation. Just because someone is not running against you doesn't mean that we don't want to know who you are. So I'm asking you, next time, please respond or participate. So with that, I wanted to plug that in right quick. But with that, let's start the conversation. I'd like to start with introductions. We'll start with Jonathan Dade. If he could introduce himself and why you're running, why should citizens vote for you, and then we'll go down the line.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Dade. I'm running for mayor here in Georgetown, Texas, and I think what she said was very important and very beautiful. This is a civic responsibility. This is a community that we all want to live, work, and play here and enjoy here. I'm always very scared when I see things go unopposed, because as an MBA myself, as a business person, I know if there's only one coffee shop in a city, sometimes they can charge any price they want to, and they don't even have to give you good coffee. So it's nice to have 2 coffee shops or 3 coffee shops. So you've got choices, and then it brings competition, always brings out the best for everyone. That's why I'm running. I'm running because I want to represent you as a community, and I think that there are a lot of underrepresented individuals in this community that need a voice. There's a couple things I'm concerned about. Number one would be growth. I love growth. I'm glad that a lot of people love Georgetown, but we got to figure out how we're going to fit all of this, you know? We've just got to plan it better. I think we've been on one type of trajectory, and I would like us to be on a little bit more of a planned or a slower trajectory if possible. That would also make things a little bit more affordable for people. I think right now it's going to be super hard, and it's only getting more and more difficult to afford our property taxes and things of that sort. And those are some of the things that I'll start with, but I guess that's enough about me. I'll go ahead and turn it over to the mic.
Okay, now I want to introduce Marcus Gonzalez. He is running for Georgetown Independent School District, Place 4.
Hello. Hi, yes, my name is Marcos Gonzalez, and I am running for Place 4. Now, I want to share a little story, and this story kind of reflects who I am and who my family is. But about 10 years ago, my wife and I and two of our friends took 5 students from Eastview High School. My wife was not a teacher back then, but we got connected with some family friends who introduced us to these 5 kids. They wanted something more, and they knew that we all had attended college at that time, but these 5 students were first-generation students that wanted something more. And so we got in our cars, and we took all 5 students to Texas State University. From that visit, 3 of the 5 students attended college after that trip. One of those got out of college to join the United States Marine Corps. So that started about 10 years ago. Fast forward to today, that program is now like an official program that has grown to about 60 kids that we still take on school tours to different universities across the state, about 4 per year. Now, I share this story because it is very important to me how, like, the connectivity, the inspiration, the passion that these kids have. They sometimes just need a little spark. They need a little inspiration, and being able to provide that to our kids and our community is huge for me, and that's like helping those kids progress is the reason I am running for school board. I just want to make this place a little bit better than it is today.
And let me, next will be Stephanie Blank, but before Stephanie starts, I'd ask Anthony Blankenship to please come up and join the conversation. So
I'll share my microphone with you. I am Stephanie Blank, and I am currently serving on the school board in Place 4. And I have only served for 2.5 years, because you may have heard of COVID, and it moved all the elections down to November. I am retired from the school district as a school psychologist and the director of special education for 15 years. I have dedicated my entire career and life to children. And when I retired from Georgetown, we had one of the best educational programs in all of Central Texas, maybe, and there's some retired teachers in here. We were absolutely incredible. I have 2 kids that also graduated from Georgetown, and I now have 3 grandsons who attend Georgetown. So I want the very best for them. Through my career, I have been able to work with children from pre-K through postgraduate. I started the Bridges program for the 18-plus children who have special needs. I even started the nonprofit, the Exceptional Georgetown Alliance, and that is for children with special needs who need, the parents and the kids need summer programming. They don't need to stay at home and live in their head. So we started this, myself and a group of parents, and that little nonprofit is still going strong, and they run the Boo Run every year in the park. I also started the Junior Leadership Program 16 years ago with the Chamber. I'm a volunteer reader at Frost Elementary School, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, anything to do with children, I'd do it. As a long-term educator, I really feel this is a critical time. You have heard that our superintendent is retiring. This is an opportunity for us to work collaboratively together with the community in finding the very best superintendent we can to take us to the next level. As you know, children have an amazing capacity to learn. They just need to have the right tools. The teachers need to have the support that they need. We need an aligned curriculum. So I feel like we have made a lot of progress in the last few years, and I want to continue that progress and continue the dialogue. So that is me, and I will turn this over to Mr. Anthony.
So Mr. Anthony Blankenship is running for place 5 in the GISD School District, and we appreciate that he's here today because he's unopposed, but he still took the time to come out to talk to us. So thank you for coming, and please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Thank you. And real quick, I'd like to apologize for my tardiness. I have 2 school-age children, a freshman son at Eastview High School who is on the varsity tennis team, and he takes a lot of coordination. And my daughter is a 7th grader, and she dances right around the corner at Arts Avenue. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with that. So busy times. Speaking of around the corner at Arts Avenue, my beautiful and talented wife of over 20 years, Sarah, painted Gus's Drugs and coordinated that community effort. So I'm not sure if you've seen her work around town. She's incredibly talented. So supporting that family takes a lot of effort and energy. And thank y'all for having me. I did send you a message, Miss Regina. I'm not sure if you saw it.
Okay.
I see we deviate a little from what I originally thought. I thought this was kind of a meet and greet time. So I'm glad I showed up when I did because I want y'all to know a little bit about me. So my name is Anthony Blankenship. I am a military veteran. The Army brought me here over 20 years ago. I served 2 years as an enlisted soldier, 3 years as a commissioned officer in the U.S. Army. I am a combat veteran. I am a person who has served in various leadership positions over my career in healthcare, my military career, and recently I wrote an award-winning book on family leadership. It's about breaking the toxic cycle of family dysfunction. I come from that. I spent the majority of my life trying to break that cycle, and in 2020, I released my award-winning book, First Generation Father: How to Build a Healthy and Happy Home When You Come from a Broken One. Since then, I've done a lot of learning, growing, and finding new ways to be of service directly here in the community. This opportunity presented itself, and it seemed like the perfect time for me to serve locally in a way where I can hopefully impact families, impact the community, support teachers, support the administration in the school district, especially in a time where I felt like the school board elections were getting a little contentious. So what I wanted to bring was a little bit of civility, a little bit of bridging the gap between opposing ideologies, a little helping people understand what I learned in the Army, which is underneath our superficial differences, we all generally want the same thing. We all want the best for our children. We all want the best for our families. We all want to feel seen and heard and respected and encouraged. We all want the opportunity for our families to succeed, especially our children. I'm excited to be joining the school board next month. I'm super excited to be joining the seasoned staff who have been around education longer than I have, admittedly, but I'm willing to learn, and the board thus far has been very helpful in teaching me, steering me, coaching me, encouraging me, sending me books, lots of books, sending me links, catching me up to speed. I'm very excited about that. Thank y'all.
Thank you. So now we just want to kind of go into the priorities of the community, whether it be for the city in general or for the school district. What do you see as the priorities that need to be addressed in your position? And how would you ensure that the community is being involved in that process? We'll start with you. Yes.
Yep, again, Jonathan Dade, thank you very much. Actually, I think she kind of answered the question for me. It's getting the community involved. At the mayoral level, the biggest way to do that is boards and commissions. So basically, people, I've served on a board, the ADA board, Americans with Disability Act board. There's so many boards, so many commissions, so many ways to serve. There are all those names usually go sent to the mayor, and then it used to be the system would be basically they were just appointed. Now the names are all sent to city council, so they kind of vote on them, or just double check the names. But it really does come down to the mayor to decide which names to basically present, and I think that's very important because if you look around the room, you're going to see different types of people. We have taller people. We have just so many different kinds of viewpoints. So I believe that on those boards and commissions needs to reflect the actual population of the city, not really just be one type of person. That's the biggest way I think in order to improve the community is really just involving them and allowing them to do their passions.
Whoever wants to go next. It's a conversation, yes.
Okay. As far as Georgetown is concerned, Georgetown ISD, I think community involvement is essential. I am pleased that we have a new strategic direction that is much more measurable, so we can actually see what were our priorities and how are we going to do on those. So student and staff well-being, and that includes academic success, which as a school board member, our first priority are the students, and if they are learning and if they're prepared for their next level. We have incredible CTE or career technology programs, but we need to make sure that our little ones are learning how to read, write, and do math. We also have a focus on teacher retention. I'm sure you have heard that there is a problem across the board, not just in Georgetown, not just in Texas, but everywhere. There is a problem. Teachers have gotten burned out. And as one who worked in the system for over 30 years, I can understand why. If you don't feel like you have the support that you need, it is a lot of work. They don't go home at 3:30 and that's the end of their day. And as one who was teaching at Southwestern just a year ago, it is a lot of work to prepare lesson plans. So that is another priority that we have. As I mentioned, we have a superintendent that has retired. So the board is committed to using an outside firm to help us find the very best candidate. And we have narrowed it down, I think, to 2 at this point in time. And both of them want to hear from the community, not just those who've been involved in our discovery or our community-based assessment or any of those others, but literally from every human being that lives in Georgetown. So that is my hope to set the direction for the future. Our kids are doing better, but as you have heard, there's a lot of mental health issues as well right now, not just academic loss. Behavioral loss. Little ones who were home when they would have been in kinder and first grade are now in second, third, and fourth, and they still haven't learned the rules of the road for school. So it is a difficult time, but everyone seems to be up for it, and we have some incredible staff that are helping to do that.
Thank you. Thank you. Marcos, do you mind if I? So for me, thank you. I think that was well said by both y'all. Incredible. For me, I think one of the priorities is creating an environment where everybody in the community feels like they're going to be heard. Right now, I'm not necessarily sure that that's the case. There are certain people that feel comfortable voicing their opinions, voicing their concerns, because they feel like kind of the system in the past has been theirs. And there's a lot of people who feel like the system isn't necessarily for them. It's not to serve them. It doesn't hear them. It doesn't want to hear their concerns, and it won't address their concerns in a serious way. And I think that's a problem. I think having genuine conversation and breaking outside of our echo chambers is a way to kind of break down that barrier. I think having people from various backgrounds and diverse backgrounds is a way to make the community understand that you do have a voice, you can be seen, you can be heard. You do have people who care about you regardless of what side of town you live on, regardless of your socioeconomic status. Especially within the GISD school district. The school district is to serve every single person, every single student, not just an elite group here or there, or the people who feel most comfortable or confident talking to someone within the higher-ups of the district. So for me personally, as someone who came from a lower socioeconomic background and went through the public school system, not here, but went through a public school system, I understand what that's like. Growing up in a single-parent home, my mother felt like, hey, man, we're just trying to make it. I'm not going to go there. I'm not even going to be seen or heard. I'm kind of like on the outskirts of this system. But I feel like everybody needs to be seen and heard, and that's something that is important to me, and I want to bring that to the school district.
Well, like, incredible by both well, by everybody here. I wanted to ask the crowd, this is a conversation, if y'all have heard about the strategic direction that the board adopted in March. Could I have a raise of hands of those folks that know what that is? Wonderful. Well, that tells me something great that's already happening, which is folks being connected and knowing what's going on. Now, the strategic direction, this is what I love most about GISD, and as I previously served in 2018 to 2021, is that I thought we had a great sense of community within the board, within the staff, within our community, and because of that, things progressed forward. For instance, the strategic direction was adopted through a series of different sessions that involve community members, it involved students, it involved leaders, it involved teachers, it involved principals. The district knew how important it was to hear from everyone and come up with a solution that drove our district forward. So those items that Stephanie mentioned were all part of a strategic direction set forth by the community. So how incredible, like everything that she said was spot on. The student learning, growth and progress, student and staff well-being, staff recruitment and retention, community and connectivity. Like those were the 4 leading items set forth by the strategic direction, set forth by all of these individuals that were included. So the district knowing how important it is to have everyone involved, that is huge. As a board member, what I would like to do is ensure this strategic plan is implemented and moves and is moving forward. Along with that, the second biggest thing is, well, superintendent being hired is absolutely huge priority, and that's priority number 1 on my list as it's an open position right now. And so finding the right person that considers that position not just as a job, but as a way of life, like being so connected with this community, with not only the district, but the outside community is going to be huge. And so somebody that's here, not for 2 years, not for a title, not for 4 years, but someone that has a long-term plan to stay here and see our kids progress, that's going to be huge for me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. So following up on the strategic direction and talking about, finding, what do we need to do? What percentage of people, truly, this is a conversation, what percentage of students and parents in this school district do you think really knows about this strategic direction and understands it and can truly participate in making a difference in it?
I'll answer that since we're guessing. So this is strictly guessing. There's no hidden answer where we know exactly what percentage of the community understands that. I'm going to say less than 10%, because that's the amount of the community that typically participates in these type of votes. And that kind of stems back to my primary concern is a lot of people feel like the system isn't necessarily for them. So they're disengaged. There's a certain percentage of the community that's disenfranchised. And I really think that with the right type of messaging, with the right type of outreach to the community, with the right type of voice, and the right type of events where people can come and talk to somebody and know that they're going to be seen and heard, we can increase that number. I think it's important. I think it's sad that all this work gets done on putting something like this together, and a good number of parents, they just don't know that it's there. And granted, there are varying factors behind that. It's not that every single person feels that the school is not going to deal with them. Some people are overwhelmed by living their own life. Some people, everything's going great, and they feel like whatever y'all are doing, just keep doing it. Some people feel like they're overwhelmed by an avalanche of information, which is the boat that I fall into. I'm like, let me start to learn some stuff. And then I start getting inundated with all this information everywhere, and I get my second and third email of the week, and I'm like, oh, that's it, I'm out. Y'all doing good? Y'all good? Everybody good? If you need help, let me know. So I think being able to relate to people in a real way, in a transparent way, where people feel like, hey, that guy gets me and knows me, we can start to create real, genuine paths where people say, hey, maybe part of the school board's role is to communicate with the district. So people say, hey, maybe you can put out something. I put out a series of videos in the early process of me running. Maybe some people feel like, hey man, just put out a video once or twice a month that kind of let us know these key things or touch on certain things that the district wants us to know that's more important, because I get checked out with all this inundation of information. Or just creating new and creative avenues where people feel that they'll be seen and heard and trusted. But to circle all the way back to your answer, yeah, I'm going to say less than 10% of people know that's there.
Okay, and so as someone else answers the question, what is it, and you started that answer, but what can we do to get more people involved? I see sometimes that there's meetings that happen while people are at work. And so how can we make that a better situation for our parents to be, one, to be more active, and two, to be more empowered? Go ahead, Steph.
One of the things that we have to do as board members is we have to attend a lot of training. We have to get our CEUs just like everybody else in the professional world. I have probably been to more conferences, school board conferences, than probably many of the others, because some of them are working. However, one of the consistent things that I have seen, number one, are superintendents who are talking to us, teaching us. They are going into their communities. They are going to the San Jose playground. They are going over to a place in Berry Creek, possibly. So they actually go to where the parents are already there. The other thing that I really have picked up on is other districts actively include their board members. So the board can divide and conquer and share this information. I agree with Anthony. I think the percentage of people who were actually involved, I mean, invitations went out, but I do know some people who were told we have enough people for that session, so they did not get to voice their opinions. But I think parents are very busy. They're working. They're taking care of kids. We have to go to them to share this. I know Fred has tried, our current superintendent. He tries and he hits a lot of different places, but as you said, Regina, they're often during the day. Parents can't take off during the day to listen to a superintendent. Yes, a lot of this is on video and posted on our website, but who's got the time to watch that if you're a parent with 3 kids and they've got homework and they've got to get to bed? It's very difficult. So there's no easy answer to this, but there are ways that we could do, and it's a divide and conquer. And let's get this out and let the parents know that we are here to listen.
I just wanted to add one thing. I think having diverse representation amongst the board would be huge and is huge, where today we have GHS and GHS feeder school representation within all of those schools, but then those activities involving those schools. So on the same side, Eastview feeder schools, and the folks kind of that are involved and represent the things that are happening on a daily basis. I say that because being a father of a couple of kids within that feeder program that feeds into Eastview, it's having conversations throughout all of these activities where parents do not have the time to do things during the day, but definitely go out to a sporting event, go out to a concert that's held at the school, different things like that, if we're able to have that communication as a board representative, like how incredible is that? How impactful is that? So I think having that kind of representation is huge. Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to switch gears to talk about workforce housing. I think affordable housing and having citizens that live in the city is important. We have too many instances where our teachers, our city workers, our police, our firefighters, our hospital workers have to, they live out of town and they have to drive in because they can't afford. I'll tell you a story I'm also a member of Georgetown Housing Initiative, and our president was told the story of a young lady that was to be a teacher in Georgetown Independent School District. She went to an apartment complex or apartment complexes in Georgetown and couldn't afford to live here. So it's a real issue. And so I just wanted to get your thoughts on workforce housing in Georgetown. What do you think that can be done about it to recruit and retain people? If they live in the community, they care more about the community. What is it that we can do to address that issue?
I think that issue falls more on the mayoral side, maybe more than the GISD side. But what we can do to make it more affordable for people to live here is some of it's just building codes. If you have codes that say there has to be a certain amount of masonry, or a house has to be of a certain size, or lots have to be a certain, look a certain way, then obviously the builders are gonna have to build it to those specifications, and then that house might cost more than if you change the specifications, or at least in certain areas where you're able to build a more affordable house. And that's just hugely important. And I think for the longest time, Georgetown has wanted to have the expensive houses and the nicest houses and have that demographic, but we need to have both demographics, clearly. One of the things I was talking with someone else earlier today about specifically for this is when the service workers, like a waiter, waitress, technicians, when they can't afford to live here, then they end up working in another city or somewhere else. So then next time you need to be able to call an electrician, there's only like a couple here in this area, that could maybe come out to be able to, help you with that. So it's just an economics thing, but it's also a cultural thing of why it's important. But definitely, that's something that we need to do better here in Georgetown.
Okay, thank you. I think it affects the school district too. So what are your thoughts?
Yes, I always have thoughts.
Okay.
So when it comes to affordable housing, I'm sure many of you are aware that years ago, this has been a problem for years and years and years, and nobody wanted to talk about affordable housing because they equated it with government housing as opposed to affordable for our teachers and our police officers and our service workers. One of the sessions I attended probably about a year ago at one of the TASB conventions I went to was actually Lockhart ISD that has collaborated with a builder to build affordable houses for staff, for teachers. I don't remember the details of it, but it was initiated by the school district and the city collaboratively to work together to do this. And that is, because Lockhart, not everybody wants to move to Lockhart as opposed to Georgetown, but by doing this, people didn't have to drive in from San Marcos to go to work. So there are ways, we just really need to think outside the box.
Anybody else have any thoughts?
Very quickly, thank y'all both for that. Yeah, there's a ton of stuff that I don't know, and I feel like that question is a bit out of my scope, but I do understand the importance of teacher pay, how that contributes to, one, overall teacher morale, two, teacher retention, which are both important things. And so one of the things that I learned about recently when I started asking questions like, okay, I want to give all the teachers a raise. Everybody said, we all want to give all the teachers a raise. But here's the issue, right? And it's all related to tax dollars and money that we give in, that we get in, recapture money that the state takes back from us, that prevents us from, that limits basically how much money we have. So it's always a balance of we want to give teachers a raise, but we only have so much money to give them a raise from, and we also feel that it's our responsibility to keep the district from going into debt, and we don't want to go into debt giving raises. We also don't want to lose teachers to competing areas that are paying more, not because they care more, but because they have that flexibility. And where can we creatively, like Stephanie alluded to, where can we creatively, once we're elected and sworn in and have time to collectively work on this together, where can we creatively get some resources to increase teacher pay for the reasons that I stated? One, for them to understand that they're seen and valued and appreciated and respected, and so that they can see that and feel it, and it's felt in their pocket. And two, to take some of the stress and burden off them, because some of the financial sacrifices that teachers are making are insane. One, it's tough to get the best and brightest talents and minds to go into teaching, because everybody kind of knows you may not be paid equivalent to going into a certain private sector of work. And then two, on top of that, like Stephanie alluded to, you're going to work all these crazy hours, and then you're going to be asked to pay out of your pocket for paper and certain utensils, which is, in my mind, unacceptable. So I feel like collectively, if we creatively and collectively amongst the entire district, amongst the mayoral elements and amongst the actual city government, work collaboratively, we can find new and creative ways to to bridge this gap for teachers.
All right, so did you have anything?
I was just gonna say, I can attest to teachers spending pocket money from their own pockets to support children, kids of needs, all of these things, because we do it in our household on a weekly, monthly basis. So absolutely, we feel that at home. But I was also gonna say, yeah, I mean, if there's a way to connect, we're talking about the district and the community working together to find quality homes at an affordable price that we can attract the best and the brightest. Absolutely, that is strong.
Okay, thank you. And we know, I think just yesterday, the Housing Advisory Board just approved to go to the council to talk about, some affordable housing, some workforce housing. So we want to support that, and maybe it's time to have that conversation with the school board to get some of our teachers and staff affordable or workforce housing. So I'm going to ask one more question, and I want the audience to kind of start thinking about what questions that you have. And if you have one after this next round, please come to the mic so that you can ask a question. So for the school district, I wanted to ask about, we know it's expensive to run district-wide campaigns for the school board, right? And just wondering what your viewpoint is on whether you will advocate, or do you think it's not necessary to elect candidates by place rather than district-wide? What is your thoughts on that, and why?
I am all for that. This is extremely expensive to run a campaign for school board, because you have to get yourself to every corner, nook, and cranny, and spend a lot of money, which could be used elsewhere. So like most of the districts that are our size, if not all, they have gone to, for a 7-member board, they've gone to 5 places that are districts, like our city council, and 2 open that are general. I believe Austin has 7 and 2. I think Round Rock has 5 and 2. And this is a way for our community to be better represented. So those that live within a certain catchment area, they have their own representative, just like city council does. So I know we have looked at it in the past, and I don't mean we, the school board, I mean we, people in the community, and it's something that we should eventually consider moving to in the future. I think it will be much better for our school district.
I agree.
I think that answers, or that question's very deep as to say, should we split it up or be open? I would love to look into that, so that we are, as a community, best represented overall. Like I said before, I take pride in saying I represent the feeder pattern that goes into EV, Eastview, just because my wife's a teacher there and we have 2 kids there. So naturally, I represent that community and being born and raised in, I believe we call it the Grasshopper area. That's home to me. The East Side is home to me. That's what I've known my whole life. But yet, understanding and knowing other parts of the community is also very important to me. So to say that having fair representation amongst the board members would be huge, and having the community as a whole fairly representative is very important, absolutely.
Thank you. Jonathan, you have kids in the school district, or does it affect you?
It affects me because I do believe it is important for us to take care of the children. My children go to a classical Christian school, Grace Academy, so they're not in the public school system. It was just a religious decision we decided to make. But I do know that for the students and children that are in the public school system, we do need to obviously make sure that they are represented and taken care of.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
I do agree with what Stephanie said. I was being a little flippant when I said that I agree, and that was it. I do agree, but one thing that is really important to me, one position that I'm committed to upholding on the school board is this. I see myself as a representative of the people. As an elected official, I'm a representative of the people's will. So yes, while I may agree with something personally, I want to make sure that I feel like it's my duty and my responsibility to implement the will of the people in the community. So if the people in the community feel like, no, we don't want to split up into districts, we don't want people geographically representing a certain area because X, Y, Z, and within fairness and within equity, the community actually feels like that, then I feel like it's my duty to vote along those lines because I'm supposed to be a representative of you, not up here doing what I want to do. And I just want to make that distinction.
Thank you. We have a question. Yes, ma'am. When you come up, if you could, say your name and your question.
My name is Paula Dawning, and I do have a question. My question is for all of you. You talked about your priorities. Can you hear me okay? You talked about your priorities, but the one I didn't hear you mention, which is of great concern, and that is of the safety of the children. What, as board members, mayor, how are you working together to collaboratively have a preventative program or programs for the safety and the welfare of the children? With many of these shootings that have taken place, it has come as an after-the-fact kind of issue. So what plans are you putting in place citywide, school district-wide, for the safety and welfare of our most vulnerable little people? And how are you going to move that up on the priority list?
Great question.
That's a wonderful question. On the mayoral side, I would have influence like with the police department, and I do talk to the police chief often. I actually talked with him a couple weeks ago and asked him his thoughts on the school violence and what can we do. Some of us believe it's on the mental health side of the things, which sometimes cause this. And the Georgetown Police Department has increased their training for their police officers to be able to interact safely with people that are going through a mental health crisis. On a personal level, I try to teach my children how to handle a situation if something happened. And even during COVID, when things were really, really bad, I used to take my children and we would ride our bicycles all to the different schools that gave the free lunches out because I wanted my children to be able to know where they could find food, And so for me, it's about training children, teaching them things, teaching them what to look out for, but it's also working with the police departments, but it's also making sure we're not using violence for violence, but more mental health professionals or people who are trained in how to deal with those situations. That's what I have been doing and seeing that will help the children, at least from the mayoral and the city side.
Thank you.
It still sounds like a silo. You're working with this group and the schools are over here. And I'm trying to see how how are you working both to engage the community and engage other organizations? And so there is a community-wide effort, because if somebody comes in there with one of those AK-16s and they shoot and kill our children, it's going to affect more than the school board, more than the fire department, more than the police. And if there hasn't been a collaborative plan, pardon my voice, it goes and comes, for the benefit. Stephanie, you talked about the mental health part, and having my background, I know a lot of our children are under a tremendous amount of stress, and the suicide rate is up. And so it's going to take more than just one organization to try and tackle this enormous problem. Thank you.
Ms. Paula, thank you so much for the courage to ask that tough question. If I could, I think this all, I often say in my family that everything connects, and I think this all stems back to an answer that I gave earlier about the importance of not just inundating the community with an avalanche of information that makes it impossible to kind of itemize exactly what's happening. So the first thing that I would want to say is that everybody has the children's safety in interest. I have school-age children myself. Everybody has everybody has the children's safety at interest. There are people up here who taught for years. There are people who have family who teach, wives who teach, like I said, children who are in school. So I think one of the biggest things that we can do on the school board is help the community understand some of the systems that are already in place. Because we see these things happen on the news and we go, oh my gosh, what's GISD doing? Without understanding that GISD for years has been implementing safety measures increasingly and consistently, and doing consistent checks to make sure that our students are safe as we can possibly make them be, that our teachers, that are people that we love within the community, are safe. So while people have valid questions of like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? Oftentimes it's just not necessarily understanding that we do a ton already. So I think that what the school board can do directly is help the community understand a little more without just an avalanche of information where they go, yeah, on slide 74 in this particular packet, it shows you what we've done recently. We can be a little bit more understanding. The community needs to hear that. They need to see that in a simple and easy, digestible way. I know that there's a relationship between the GISD and the Georgetown Police Department, a very effective relationship, and it's working well. I think one of the things that we can do right away is just highlight that, communicate that to people, so to kind of make people feel at ease and understand that this is an issue that's been being dealt with and worked on for years, both the immediate physical threat and the mental health side. If that answers your question.
Okay, this is, I would probably take an hour to really do a good job with this answer. Let me read to you what the student and staff well-being requirement is in the new strategic direction. Students want to come to school, they're treated with respect and are respectful to each other and to adults. Students feel Georgetown schools and classrooms are physically and psychologically safe places where fear of harm, harassment, or demeaning comments is negligible. We need to be open, honest, and transparent and collect the data in order to ensure that is happening. If we don't teach the children how to appropriately behave, we're always going to have continued discipline problems. School safety is not just about school safety. We go through safety audits through Texas State. They come without telling us, and they'll go to a school and they'll try to get in. If they get in, then there is a whole bunch of ramifications. So I think as a district, we are trying to keep the building safe. But as you know, at high school, they have to go outside to go to auto tech. They've got to go to the field house. They've got, even in middle school, they leave the building to go do their recreation. It's really not just about the school. You could be in your bank. You could be at a birthday party in a park. It can happen anywhere. I know some people who were afraid at two-step this weekend just because there's so many mass shootings. This is a very complicated question. I do have to say that the district has gone into collaboration with the Lone Star Circle of Care, and we do have a medical facility over at the Richarte building, the annex at the high school, and it now will be including counseling services for families. I know of an incident that happened the other day at one of the after-school programs, and I have to say the staff handled it absolutely perfectly. So it is requiring training to every staff member to not turn a blind eye to bullying, harassment, anything. It's training. It really comes down to training. So we have to work together, the community with the police, and that's a capital UNITY. I do believe we have an incredible program or collaboration with the district, and I see my time is up.
Perfect. I was just going to add the swiftness within the community and the district implementing items just from the physical state of safety precautions as different events arose. Whenever I was on the school board, it was incredible to witness how quick we were able to implement some physical items within our schools to make sure there were safety precautions done as far as keeping the front of the facility closed for anyone just to be able to come in. And it used to be anyone would just go straight in and go all the way through the school without any check-in. And now every school has that stop. At Georgetown High School, there was an open space between the main school and Richarte as kids were going through. So it was a huge deal to make sure there was barriers made so someone couldn't just come in at their will. So pretty awesome to see that collaboration with the community and also how swift the district could respond. To say also that ongoing communication, that ongoing awareness of how important safety is, I think that needs to continue to make sure we are as safe as we could possibly be. One last thing, I know the schools, we're talking about like locked doors and teachers being aware, students getting educated on the way things used to be and how things are now. I know I hear a lot of complaints from my wife because kids are like, just let me in. That's not the way it works anymore. Like, there are safety precautions that have been done, and teachers are aware that how important it is. And so that's pretty neat from a personal perspective that I've seen go on and the progression from our safety.
Let me ask a follow-up to that. You know, we've talked about, you know, the suicide rate going up. We're talking about the safety of our kids. Kids can't go to school to just learn anymore. And then we're still, in my opinion, catching up to COVID. There's students that were out for that period of time that did not learn. We have first and second graders that are, you know, kindergarten status. So what is it from the city perspective can we do to make our citizens feel better, from the school district perspective, to make our citizens, the cost of living is going up. They can't afford, people have to work more to be able to afford groceries and gas. Again, suicide rate, they're stressed because they're scared to go to school. And I know that they're addressing from a district-wide, but from a child's perspective, you know, what can we do to make them feel more empowered to be a part of their experience?
I think on the city side, we can continue to breathe life into a lot of the programs that we do have. There are some organizations that do a very good job working with children and providing them with that culture of kindness and resources. And I mean, even down to, the Right On Center for Kids and whatnot. And I know the city could probably do more, I think. Also with the rec center, our parks, I think we can just really encourage it for the children. There's even little things you can do, like with the library, encouraging children to read more. Obviously, as they're educating themselves and learning more about the world around them, we can incentivize that. We can encourage that. And I think that that's something we could do. I think it's something we could tackle.
That was like a six-headed question.
I know, I do that.
So I'm going to keep it to childhood education. As a parent who had 2 kids going through middle school during COVID, this is something that I've seen a lot, and I've seen kids go on 2 tracks during COVID. I've seen kids who, just like you mentioned, are behind and trying to catch up, and I saw kids who really kind of slingshot. They were able to slingshot ahead during COVID, and now any sort of education gap that existed before COVID is only exacerbated, where now these students are really advanced, and these other students are struggling to catch up. So one of the things that I think it's important to do is to engage the parents in the community and help the parents feel empowered and encouraged to understand that the value of education starts at home. It starts with an attitude within the home that we value education. And it starts with parents modeling behavior that will encourage their children to take value in their own education. I understand everybody has complex lives. I understand that people are busy. My wife and I are busy. If I showed you our schedule right now, you wouldn't be able to believe it. But guess what? They see us reading. We read to them. We engage in deep conversations with them. They understand that we value education, which in turn makes them value education. They see us branching out of our comfort zone. They see us stretching ourselves. They see us giving to the community. I think that sometimes we, in trying to be compassionate, we say, oh man, the parents who have school-age children, they have so much going on and life is hard. And I get it, it is. I'm not trying to discredit that. I come from that. But I also feel like the attitude within the home of we value education here will go a long way in helping kids have the right attitude, not only in school, but taking pride in their own education and progressing themselves, especially where they see there's opportunities for them to catch up to their classmates.
I think to address the question of how can we make children feel more empowered, I think for me, as a community, engaging with these kids and in a number of different ways. Like you connect with kids and meet them where they are. Every kid's different, but believing in them and showing, like, believing in them and then encourage them to be whatever they wish to be, and if you're able to help them along that path, how impactful that is. But how to make children feel more empowered, I think first meeting them where they are and then believing them once you hear them and listen to them and encourage them to be better and to get where they want to be.
Thank you.
I believe the beginning of your question had to do with suicide and several other mental health issues. You know, families don't want to believe that there's a problem within their family until the catastrophe actually happens to them. And several years ago, a young man blew his brains out just a few doors down in a car in front of his peers who were trying to rescue him. We all know families who have dealt with the kids with suicide. With myself being a volunteer with the victim services with the police department, those were my hard ones, really trying to comfort a family that can't understand. But we also hear about kids who are unintentionally committing suicide because they're taking pills that are laced with fentanyl. Several months ago, GISD sponsored a workshop for parents on the dangers of fentanyl. I went. There was only 30 people at Hammerlin listening. I now have Narcan in my car after what I heard. My daughter has Narcan. There are so many mental health issues out there and societal issues, and we have to work together and really try to get the attention of our parents and our community. With children who have behavioral issues, a lot of times we want to give them grace. Oh, well, this is what's going on at home. Mm-hmm. We can understand where a behavior is coming from without reinforcing it. And by not sticking to consequences, that just moves the line for the behavior to continue. So it really boils down to I think our school district has got amazing counselors and behavior specialists that are doing the best they can. We probably need to find $1 million more and hire 1 million more of them, because every school needs that. That's what I have been doing in my reading buddy. He really has mental health issues. And so we're not only reading, I'm trying to reach him. And he has agreed to let me be with him next year, which is huge, because he didn't like me at first. So this is a societal issue, and we need to work collaboratively together to help fix it. And that's where all the other nonprofits in town help us.
Thank you. Thank you all for that. Paulette, of course.
Wow. I heard, and I have 2 comments, and I heard the gentleman talk about the behaviors and what you teach at home and all of that. But sometimes home, the parents themselves aren't equipped to do that. And so then it doesn't start from home. It starts collaboratively someplace else. Those seeds have to be planted. Some of those parents were dropouts or special ed students, and we've experienced it all. And so you have to come up with a way to reach the children. I think someone said, go to the community, and sometimes not, have the community come to you in a big fancy building, but in little small pods where you talk at a church fellowship hall or some other way. I stood to ask, I got so caught up with that. I'm hearing more in my community about the divisiveness or the division between Georgetown High School and Eastview. And I hear the grumbling of, Eastview is turning into a low-level thuggish school. I mean, this is coming from kids in my community. And this equity versus equality among the schools somehow has to be eradicated, because if we're going to deal with the kids and get the scores up and get the kids feeling good about themselves, then we've got to do something between these schools. And I remember going to a football game where the school district allowed kids to wear, "This is my home," or "This is something, it still belongs to us," and wouldn't allow the kids. I still see this equity versus equality thing between GHS and Eastview. And somehow, something has to start within the home of those schools, the outreach and the inreach, and I hope it does.
And so with that, do you see that same issue, and how would you address it?
It saddens me. I remember, and Marcus probably remembers too, when Eastview was being built, and it was going to grow into being a second high school. And I remember the community at that time, it was like, well, that's where those kids go. I'm sure you remember that, yes. Right? But Dr. Denny was the principal at that school, and Eastview was outshining Georgetown in everything.
Yes.
I think it's difficult. I mean, obviously, I have a grandson that goes to GHS, but his cousins go to Eastview, and they're outstanding students. So I don't know. I mean, I would have to look comparatively at my data, because you know I've got data, to find out if this is a perception, or is it a climate? Is it a culture? We need to do a deep dive and find out why your kids in your neighborhood are feeling that way. And that's where I would go to them and ask them, why do you feel that way, and what can we do to change that? You know, it is sometimes over the parents' pay grade to be able to change behavior. And as you know, when I was an assistant principal, I usually got very involved with the family. And just a few years back, they pulled me out of retirement, and I was an AP at an elementary school. And one of the frequent flyers who was always in my office, I adopted her whole family. And I stayed as her mentor after that year. She's now a very successful 8th grader. They moved to Manor, but she still calls me. So the problems that are being brought up, we need to address openly. Now, there is a new principal there this year, so I'd be curious to see if things have gotten better, gotten worse. I have to say, at graduation, I really appreciate the Eastview kids, because this is their night. And they come with their hats decorated and their mariachi band in the stands, and it's fascinating and exciting. And I didn't notice that with Georgetown. So there is a liveliness to Eastview. So I'd be curious, I'd want to meet, and maybe Marcos can answer that better since he's got kids there.
I think we and I want to say a lot of folks that are familiar with Eastview and have been involved with Eastview for a long time have heard those same rumors or feel that GHS gets more stuff, has more stuff, better resources, a number of different things, and Eastview is kind of a second thought. I've heard those rumblings. I've heard them. My experiences have been different, to say that I graduated from Georgetown High School in '98, and I bled blue. When my wife became a teacher, I was like, oh, Eastview, like red, like that's different. That's like, I don't know if I could support Eastview. It's different. Like being born and raised in Georgetown, there's some pride to that. It took only a year for me to like grab onto the Eastview culture and to bleed red. Now, I've evolved as a person that I've had the experience of getting to know a whole lot of GHS folks and a whole lot of Eastview folks, and I think there's so many incredible things happening at both schools that it's pretty awesome. I think one of the biggest differences is having a new principal and having some turnover. We see that turnover in coaches as well, which we know how many kids participate in football and basketball. And there's been a lot of turnover. And I think Mr. Longoria at Eastview, I've only experienced a number of positive things. I see him at every single, like, so many different events with our past principal, and other folks, you didn't see them. You didn't feel it. You didn't think they had, like, our past principal. I didn't see her at a number of different events. Mr. Longoria, tons of events. So, and all the principals as well. Like, we see them involved, like, all different types of stuff. And I think that leadership that brings a culture, and I think I'm excited because I think it's gonna start spreading. I think there was a lull, like, oh my goodness, Eastview, what's happening there? But I've always thought that Eastview has incredible students, great diversity, which makes the culture incredible. And then I think with this right leadership, it's gonna be exciting to see. But definitely room to grow, but it's already exciting.
Perfect, thank you. We have probably time for 2 more questions, and then we'll wrap up with summaries and let you have final words. So, okay.
I hate to do this to you. If I could get 45 seconds to answer her question.
Sure, I'm sorry. Yeah.
One, I think you're 100% right. I think that's a microcosm of what we're seeing on a bigger scale across the country, division rather than unity, the us versus them. People are falling into labels. It's this side versus that side. It's right versus left. It's rich versus poor. It's black versus white. It's division at all levels. And I think that it's incumbent upon the leadership within the community to reflect diversity and to also establish the culture of unity versus division. When you talk about that particular incident between Eastview and Georgetown High School, the way the 2 principals handled that was perfect. They sent out a letter collaboratively and said, this isn't who we are, this is not who we're gonna be. And their actions since then have proven that. I see them together often, I see them talking, I see them working together, and I told them both individually before I decided to run for the school board, I see what you're doing and I appreciate that. I think having people on the school board who represent diverse groups will only continue to do that, to build a culture of inclusivity and connectivity rather than division. Even if that's happening at a bigger level, we don't have to let that ingratiate itself here into the Georgetown community.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Rick Vasquez. I'm also a native of Georgetown, as you know. And this question is really geared to Marcos and Stephanie because they're the 2 running against each other this evening. Okay. That's fine. So as a parent that, have put kids through Georgetown High School and 2 at, 1 through Eastview and 1, another one at Eastview right now, I need a vote. I got 2 folks here. I need a vote. Okay. So I'd like to understand what differentiates the 2 of you in helping us reach our goal and making our schools perform better at test scores and things of that nature all around. What differentiates the 2 of you?
Who wants to go first? Wasting seconds. So who wants to go first?
Well, I could speak to myself, and I say the great thing about this is we can look at someone's past, someone's experience, and kind of gauge of who we think would be your representative for the school board. And there's no right or wrong answer to that to say, like, who am I, in summary is, and again, this is just who I am. My parents both migrated from Mexico when they were around the age of 14. My mom graduated Georgetown High School not knowing any English, and then connecting with a teacher and a counselor that helped her graduate. Then my dad, when he came, straight to construction, 30 years in construction. That was my life, like worrying about whenever it rained, was there gonna be a paycheck coming in, all of those things that come with that kind of industry. Then I wanna say, getting inspired through a number of different ways to not just settle with what's typical of many kids that I grew up with, and being inspired to do more. And from that, fast forward, it's I went to college, graduated, and then I've been in banking for 20 years, been doing a whole lot of different things, helping business clients, commercial clients, personal clients in our community evolve and get better. And then my heart just always connects with kids in a number of different ways, as a mentor, as a coach, teaching leadership skills, connecting with them, and wanting to, those things that help me evolve as a person, I want to have that kind of positive impact on kids today. So That drives me to do the best that I could potentially do as a board candidate. And we could have the best possible plan and say all the right stuff, and then we could have a pandemic that happens that changes everything. And I think just having the right folks in that want to do the right things is important. Yeah.
Okay, what sets me apart? Well, obviously, the demographics of Georgetown ISD have changed a lot since I moved here in 1980, and I started working in the Georgetown schools in 1986, where we were over 70% white back then. Now we are 42% white, and I don't think a lot of people understand that. And we're 44% Hispanic. And since the census has changed, there's also a mixed area, which actually my grandchildren are mixed. Their father is Venezuela heritage from his mother's side. I'm not very diverse, obviously, look at me. I'm pretty white. However, and I live on the west side of town, which again is not very diverse. However, I have lived all over the world. I even lived in Monterrey, Mexico when I was a child for 3 years, when I was a child. I have a very worldly perspective for children, and my background in school psychology, having worked in the educational system, having been an assistant principal, having been president of state organizations, building things from scratch. Back in '95 is when I took over special ed, and we had to turn the ship and really improve. And I have to say, we had one of the best special ed programs in the state, and people came to emulate it. And so upon my retirement, the Texas Education Agency had me work for them in mentoring the districts that were on the needs intervention list, as well as other law firms had me doing a whole lot of training. So what I bring to the table is a wealth of knowledge. Those of you who know me know I am data-driven, and I'm the one that makes all of these charts when we get the data so we can see who are the schools that are doing well and who needs our support. Who needs more money? Who seems to be chronically not doing well? How are we going to support them? I can't make that happen. School board members can't make that happen. That is too in the weeds. But we can ask the questions because our top priority are student achievement and success. So that's, in a nutshell, what I bring. And I'm sure Marcos and Anthony feel the same way. If you want to talk to any of us more in depth later, we'd be more than happy to.
So keep in mind, we'll have 30 extra minutes after this session for you to talk one-on-one. And we want to take advantage of that opportunity again because they were kind enough to come and talk with us. So we have one last question, then I have one online question that I'd like for us to make sure that we cover. So whatever question you have, you guys have 1 minute each to answer.
Good evening. First, I'd like to thank each of you for offering to serve. My name is Wayne Gussman, retired teacher, my second career. Couple comments and then a question. The first comment is when we talk about things like single-member districts, please keep in mind that some things are about principles and some things are about practices. So when we talk about wanting to represent your districts, and I appreciate where you're coming from, Mr. Blankenship, I think we understand accountability, but some things are about principles and some things are about practices. When we talk about things like the incidents that were going on between the two school rivalries, I was on board at GISD when that first happened, and I appreciate, Mr. Blankenship, your comments about acknowledging that it's real. It is real, and understanding the larger context that we live in. Now my question. From whatever perspective you think you might have, can you share some insight that has caused you to want to work in a particular area that impacts the education of our students? Based upon what insight, what perspective you think you might have. Thank you.
Okay, well, when I ran 3 years ago, it was with the perspective that we needed to bring back a written curriculum, a scope and sequence that will help the teachers. Because many of you look to be older than 25, and I don't know if you remember, but at one time, Texas and most of the other states did not have a state-required curriculum. A lot of that changed in the 80s, and Texas developed the essential elements, which was the state curriculum. And many of you probably, if you went to Texas schools, you took the TOS tax teams, and now it's STAR. But it was aligned with the state curriculum. So we've never been about state testing. We've been about accountability and teaching the TEKS, the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. If we teach the curriculum, and I'm done already?
Yep.
Or are you just waving to me?
No.
Okay, so that's where I'm coming from, is I expect data-driven decision-making. Let's see who needs the help, and let's get ourselves a curriculum, a scope and sequence, and get every resource possible in the hands of the teachers.
Anyone else? And go. No, for me personally, great question. Education saved my life. I come from nothing. My mom dropped out of high school to have me. My dad did 10 years in prison. You talk about kids going to school where they don't have a safe and healthy home. I grew up in that. I have every statistical check mark against me that I should be like my older brother who's been in prison for 20 years, like my younger brother who is addicted to drugs, like my younger sister who had a baby at 16 while our dad was in jail. I call them my brothers and sisters, but we all have different mothers. My dad had 7 kids, 5 different women. I come from chaos. It's education that saved my life. And it's a value of education that I put on myself that that freed me from all those things that were supposed to be my destiny. I think I can speak to parents, I can speak to teachers and encourage them that their work is important. I can speak to parents who say, gosh, I have nothing going for me, and I can help them see that them encouraging the value, a mindset of education is important in this household can free their children up to anything they want to become. That's important to me. I feel like I can speak to that with credibility, and it's something that I plan to do. Thank you.
Marcos, you have any comments?
I want to say that when I first ran in 2018, there was not one particular subject that I said, I have to make sure I attack this and make this better. My want to run for the school board was, if I have the ability, instead of just making an impact on 1 kid or 10 kids, having a positive impact on 12,000 kids, how incredible would that be? By connecting with the community, being a father to 2 students, being a husband to a teacher, I automatically have skin in the game, but yet I want to make sure, like, can we positively impact the district as a whole? Meet kids where they are. Some kids are here, want to make them there. These kids, here. Whatever it is to inspire them to grow and be better people, that's what I want to be able to have an impact on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, go ahead, Jonathan. No, you can.
I was just going to say,
This is a conversation.
just for me, running for mayor, it's the word legacy. My 2 children, they live here, obviously here in Georgetown, and I just want to leave a legacy for them. I want this to be a community that they remember, and then, maybe one day they live here with their children, that kind of thing. And that's what I want to represent for the children. That's really, really what I want to do.
We do have one question that's online, and so I'd like for us to read that question and you incorporate it into your final thoughts, okay? Who has the question? You can read it. Yeah, yes.
Okay, we do have a question from the online audience from Greg Derricott. The question is, please list some of the objectives, milestones, and how they are quantified. It was asked earlier in the evening, so you may have addressed some of these already.
Yeah, you may have addressed. So, list some of the objectives from a school district or city perspective of some of the objectives. I'm gonna kind of modify the question so that, if that's okay. What are some of your objectives that you think need to be done to get your job done and to be effective for the community, for our kids? And I'm gonna do a quick story. I did a career day in East Austin. Okay, I'm sorry. I did a career day in East Austin last week. And these are kids that don't have hope. The parents don't feel like the schools are serving them. They feel like their kids are behind. And I just talked to these three little boys. Two of them wanted to be a football player, a basketball player, and one of them wanted to be a beekeeper. And I said, but in order to get there, what are some of the skills that you're going to build? And they had no idea. And so somehow we got on the subject. You know, you can start your own business now. Just to introduce the concept that you can start your own business now. The next day, he lives with his grandparent. The next day, the grandparent called up to the school and said, who is that Miss Regina? And she does that P thing, because I told them that I did procurement, because I wanted them to try to pronounce it. So, and she does that P thing, but his whole perspective changed. And it's just that 1 minute, 5 minute conversation that can make the difference in a child's life. And us taking the time to have this conversation to perhaps inspire another teacher, an administrator, a parent, or even a student is the reason that we're here. And so I just hope that, you know, as we have this conversation, that we can spread the word to others to inspire these kids, and that we not only serve on the city council, that we not only serve as the mayor, that we not only serve on the school board, but that we go into those schools and know who those students are, know who those administrators are, to make a difference. So that's my spiel. So with that, I'd like you to just give us your final thoughts as we are getting ready to approach election, whether you're an incumbent and getting ready to serve. What are some of the milestones and objectives that you think are important that needs to be achieved in those prospective positions?
So my name is Jonathan Dade. I'm running for mayor. One of my biggest objectives is inclusivity. I really, really want to see some representation on the boards and commissions, and I think that is something the mayor can directly affect. Whether it's 40%, 30%, 70%, it's whatever our community looks like, making sure that they are included and they are represented on the boards and commissions. That's probably my #1 goal. There's different ways to make that happen. Maybe my secondary goal is to continue working with the police department to make sure that we can continue to keep this as a safe community and a welcoming community. So those are some of my key objectives that I'm going to work very hard to accomplish, and I think I can do it.
Thank you. Marcos?
I want to say I want to continue in the most impactful possible ways to be a positive advocate for our community and our district. That's what I would like to do. I think each and every day I live that with my connections through mentoring, through coaching, and I want to, like you had mentioned before, connect at the end of the day with these students to inspire them to do more and more and more, and to make them believe that anything is possible. So we have a strategic direction that was built by the community, which I think hits on so many important aspects, and then me being able to ensure that those items are being met in order to have that end result of inspiring kids to do more.
Thank you. Stephanie?
My goals are for all kids, and that's why I started the Junior Leadership Program, to inspire them to be whatever they wanted to be. And this is through the Chamber of Commerce. And because of their experience in being out in the community and going into the ER in the hospital and having the city council have them on the dais and put them through being the mayor or city council, I have seen these students change career paths because they were not aware that these things were out there. Children learning and being inspired is my bottom line. That is why I serve at the Boys and Girls Club. It's why I train for the Boys and Girls Club of Central Texas. I want to see every child be successful. I want to see every teacher be inspired to make every child successful. If the teachers, that is a very primary goal for me, benchmark for me. I am pleased that our strategic direction now has some goals and objectives, and I'm being cut off. They're not all as measurable as I would like them to be, but they're getting there. Thank you. And thank you for inviting us.
Thank you all so much for coming. My name is Anthony Blankenship. I'm running for the GISD School Board, Place 5. I started my campaign with two primary goals. One is bringing balanced solutions to the complex issues facing the GISD school district, the administration, the parents, the students, the faculty, and the staff. As you can tell from the questions that were asked tonight, the issues facing the GISD are many, they're varied, they're complicated, they're nuanced, and I think that the board needs to reflect that in order to bring the same matching energy to solving those problems. The second element of my campaign was based on bringing the community together, bringing Georgetown together. I think it's important that the rift that was talked about earlier between this group and that group, left and right, Eastview and Georgetown, racial strife, whatever the differences are, I think it's important to have people in leadership that can talk to varying segments of the community and see through that, break down barriers, and earn trust amongst varying groups so that people trust that the leadership has everybody's best interest in mind.
Well, thank you all. Let's give them all a round of applause. So just as a reminder, we have with us today, running for mayor, Jonathan Dade. We have here with us today, running for Georgetown Independent School District, Place 4, Stephanie Blank. And Marcos Gonzalez. And then we have unopposed here to visit with us today, and we appreciate that because we appreciate that. Place 5, Anthony Blankenship. Now, just as some reminders, Election Day is May 6th. Early voting is April 24th through May 2nd. Last day to apply to vote by mail is April 25th. Please encourage others to vote. It's not just a privilege, it's a responsibility. So let's make a pact, whether you're here or online, that we get at least 20 people to vote. I bet you thought I was gonna say 10, right? Yeah, 20. So with that, we gonna hang around. Hopefully our candidates will hang around and have opportunity to talk to you one-on-one, and we'll be here till 8:30. So again, give yourselves a round of applause. And I want to thank GCCMA, GTX Connect, and the Micah Workers for putting this together, for GTX for bringing the food. I'd like to thank First United Methodist Church for allowing us to use this facility. Micah Workers has our cookies, so please grab some. Thank you, and good night. Absolutely.